thank you for all coming in. I tried to meet everybody and say thanks. It was really cool, and there's like 5 people here. A few more came in. That's nice. Would have been really awkward if nobody'd come. So I appreciate you getting up early like this and coming down. Drew, just to correct something, the Multipla doesn't come from my time at Fiat. No. We started the concept work when I was there, but that's Robbie Giolito and his team who did the Multipla. Interesting comments on BMW, thank you. But anyway, so I thank the team here for having me, and Drew asked me to talk about what I'm doing now and what interests me. And so I'm going to talk about empowerment. And if I'm in your way or something like that, just say, Chris, get out of the way. So, empowerment. And I would like you to look at this from the experience I'm having right now with my business in Italy. Not so much with the business as it is with where we live. And what I'm learning about letting go. Letting design happen without a designer. And that's what I want you to think about and what that could mean for us if we look at the revolution of design, industrial design, as industrial humanism, which is not so much about industry and commerce, that happens too, but about the people in the loop, which I think is very important. So this is where we live now. This is in construction in the wintertime, a little bit of fog in the background. Northern Italy, a very nice place where we have a lot of fun. We can do lots of cool stuff there. I put in a big bench in the vineyard. Learned a lot in this project. It's not a new idea. There have been benches around for a long time. But, you know, a big thing like this out in a vineyard, these people have never seen that. The whole idea, you could sit on this thing and feel like a little kid, was really cool to them. And now we get pilgrims. They like show up at the house. Which way to the bench? You know, that kind of stuff. It was so much fun. We decided to do some other stuff. I was invited to make a scarecrow for an art competition on scarecrows. So we made this big kooky thing out of farm parts. And it was really cool, really scary though, in the fog. All this kind of stuff. And the guys working on it had a huge amount of fun. And this is where I want to begin to tell you about doing things without you in the middle. In this particular case, one of my colleagues, Francesco, there, he's my neighbor. He's a really good welder. He did the bench with me. I said, Francesco, I need a hand. What do you think about a hand? And he comes back with this really gruesome hand, which was really cool. And one of the blacksmiths on it, I guess that's what they call it, it's a fabbro in Italian, smithy, a guy named Paolo. Paolo is a really kind of serious guy, young guy, runs his own business. He's very careful, very precise. And then I really saw him open up until I asked him, well, can you do part of this, you know, how you would do it? And he just like came alive to be asked to contribute some. Okay, they're arty, they're art projects. We got so excited by this stuff we thought we'll try something new. We'll make a tree out of metal. So this is it in its early construction days. That's Francesco up there welding. And it's a kind of a randomy affair. Part of it is very precise. The base is done calculated so it can hold all the stresses. But actually dividing it up into panels for the colored glass that'll come, that's where we are right now. It's going to look like a big Tiffany lampshade, I hope. This requires a little bit more hands-on decision making. And this too was a really exciting thing to involve people and ask them to contribute in some ways. Even Laura, my studio manager, she said, I want to learn how to weld. And so we kind of let her go out and weld one day with Francesco, and she had a great time about this. Perhaps you've seen on the internet something I did with TED Conference Munich. They're called TEDx's. And I talked about the staircase in our house. It was done with this guy, Pino. This is him here. I asked him to make an arch for me one day to put the staircase in. And you know, when you ask somebody to make a curve, that's a statement. It's not just mathematical precision. This is their idea of what correctness is. And this was a particular curve because I asked for an accelerating staircase, and that's what's being made now as Pino defined it. And of course the project that I showed then at TEDx was this one, which is very interesting. My architect, Paolo Ornato, had a very tough time figuring out how to put a staircase in the house. So with Pino the bricklayer, he actually drew it in full scale, called up the dimensions to his assistant, Davide, who put it into a computer and created this picture. And I looked at that picture and I said, I want it a bit more like this, a bit more like this, a bit more like this. And armed only with this picture and the lines on the basement, you know, no section drawings, no CAD readouts, no plots, no models, none of the stuff that you would do to precisely say, I want exactly this. Just that. It kind of has to look like this, tapered walls and a curve. Then Pino, can you see this? Is this too light? It's readable? Okay. Pino set to work doing it as he would do it, laying out sticks and strings, but this time in a completely different fashion to get as close as he could get to kind of how we wanted it. But actually how it flows with the lights and the bricks and everything all comes from him. I couldn't have told him how to do that. He figured all that out. And so the end result is a very natural, authentic looking staircase, even though it's really weird, but it has to be like this. You can't get down the house. But more importantly, Pino isn't just executing. He's not just taking a drawing and doing his very best to make it exactly that. He's actually contributing. And he's a really happy guy, I think. I mean, usually is. He likes this fact that I treat him as a co-creator in this process. And I think this is really important. In fact, this idea that you can surround yourself with a lot of happy people if you just let them be more a contributor than an executor is kind of the point of what I want to talk about today. Eric Gill, you might remember, some of you guys are into graphics. He was Gill sans serif, Gill bold. It's a typography you might see somewhere. You guys know he's a famous British typographer. And he wrote in On Typography, a great book you should read, that there will be a split between design for industry and design that involves people, that makes the people, the client, co-creator with the product, that makes the creators of it, the people actually physically doing it, somehow valuable in the process. He called that humanism, and he said commercialism, industry are incompatible with humanism. There will be a split. The two will never come together. If you actually read On Typography by Gill, it reads like a guy's diary on the Titanic. I'm going down, my whole culture is dead, nobody cares about what we do, blah, 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 right? Well, one of the objectives that we have as designers is to create a sustainable world. And part of the pillars of sustainability are not just ecological and financial, but it's cultural sustainability. And design in this role of all of these is like a labyrinth. It's like a maze. Design is something that gets you from one end to a target. A target is doing the right thing. We take a concept like mobility, a car, and we want to hit a sustainable world. And so if we put the right amount of meaning into design, people will understand, well, then this car with its design has the right meaning, I'll do the right thing, and we will create a sustainable world. Everybody's happy. If we don't do it, if we get them lost in the maze because design doesn't do its job, it confuses them, it gives them the false indications, it leads them the wrong way, it doesn't lead them to a sustainable world. They don't make the right choices then. They don't make the right choices, they don't do the right thing, and in the end of the day, something's not going to work. Well, if you look around the world today, I don't know if you can see this, there's all kinds of things in a sustainable world that design could be dealing with. We've got energy and infrastructure issues and housing and climate change and water politics. But this one up here, the individual contribution, that's what I want to talk about today. It is also part of a sustainable world. What are we doing about the idea of the individual in an industrial commercial world? Well, we're in an area right now that has some very interesting experiences recently with what happens when individuals aren't in that same pathway. They aren't along the same line of sustainability in that sense. And what do the headlines say about it? They say things like, teenagers lack hope, youth unemployment at heart. I remember watching this guy on TV saying, the system let me down, didn't give me a chance. Oh, shit. We didn't give this guy a chance. We're not giving them hope. You look around the rest of the world, there's lots of people looking for hope. There's lots of people looking for a chance. A chance to do what? What exactly? Give the right vote? Okay, that's a good thing. Maybe be participants? Maybe actually contribute something in a society? Here, once again, it's an economic woe for the Arab youth. No quick fix for it. Is it just the youth that's an issue? I think it's kind of like all over the world, all age groups. If you look around, there's lots of people in this world that we don't really know how to give them something to do, basically. I mean, there's a famous line from Scripture, the poor you will have with you always. It doesn't say anywhere in there that they're just going to sit around. So this idea that the world could have more to it than what we're offering, I think really comes back to our job as designers. Are we letting them in the game? Or are we just feeding them, Here, just take what we do. We do it. Just take what we do. You know, this difference between rising for freedoms and rising for commercialism, somehow this whole picture of the world, I think, we as designers have not really confronted in terms of ourselves. Because we see the world differently. We don't see it as nations. We see it as basically three gigantic parts. A part of the world that spends a lot of money, a part of the world that doesn't spend that much money, and the part of the world that spends as least money as possible. That's the world to us. Right? Forget the nations. That's not so interesting. Right? People in Japan buy the same thing that they buy in Mexico, all that kind of stuff. No, no, no. Big spenders, medium spenders, and spend as little as possible. Right? These guys, they're not even in the equation. Unless we say, well, we're going to design for them. Right? That's what we do. We'll design it for you. We're going to uplift you. Or we treat them like some kind of, really cool clients who just don't happen to have any money. Like these guys here. Designing for a poor classroom. I mean, this is like really super cool project. We design for them, so they'll feel really good, They got just what people who spend a lot of money would get. They just didn't spend the money. That's all we do. That's us, right? That's how we empower them. That's how we help the world be more somehow contributive by saying, well, don't leave it to us. If you look at the history of design, actually improving the world, like those two projects just proposed, which is a good thing, I'm not against that. That's the fundamentals of where design started from. 150 years ago, you look at the roots of industrial design, it started with, let's improve our world. Can we do this systematically? Can we apply some rules? Can we apply some programs, some processes to do this? And then, you know what? We're going to empower the world. We're going to make it easier for them to command their world. We're going to give them the ability, because we know how visual languages work. We know that switches should go like this instead of that. We'll make it less confusing for them. We'll empower the world. We didn't stop there. We said, all right, now we just feed this big consumption machine. And that's about where we are right now as designers, is we're just here to feed that part of the world, I guess. And in doing so, we've created a world where the little part of it thinks it commands everything. Right? It's just completely reversed from the physiology of physical dimensions of the world, where the people are, how many human beings are on the planet. The part that's the smaller part, they run everything, right? Okay, along the way, it gave us some superstars. Here, Raymond Loewy, Philip Stark. That's cool. These guys, somehow really stood out. And we made a whole bunch of really cool stuff. Nothing wrong with that. I like cool stuff. I have no complaints about cool stuff. That's really neat. All right. Maybe we don't always play to the best audience. Maybe sometimes, we're just creating a lot of stuff, and it's got some really unintended side effects from that. But at the end of the day, we're doing our job well, aren't we? Like, as we know it. Because we see ourselves as the elite. We are the coolest. About 2,000 years ago, only the elite could read and write. You know that? Only the elite could read and write. Now we think everybody's got to spend 12 years learning to read and write. Why? You're going to be Goethe? Are we going to be a Shakespeare? No, because we say reading and writing is fundamental to be empowered contributors in your society, to be players in the game. You have to read and write. No, but design? No, you stay out of it. That's our business. Well, just because everybody can read and write, or at least a lot of people can, doesn't mean that we got rid of professional writers. So what are we worried about? Are we afraid we're going to be out of a job? Design is all about how precise you can make it. You make it just like I want it. Don't let that clay do the talking. I'll do the talking. Precisely as it is, reproduced precisely, every time exactly the way that we want it, right? I mean, talk about a super kind of anal occupation. That's got to be ours, all right? Like exactly like this, I love this shot here. It's a great shot. These are guys, they're dealing with a BMW here, which is probably 5 Series. Notice that little white tooth? This is a big blow up on a huge screen. Notice that little white tooth there? That is a clip between the plastic of the grille and the hood, where they mate, probably is what it is. And this guy's pointing out the fact that when you get it down just like this and look just like this, a customer could see that clip. That's not going to be very nice. We have to get rid of that. You would never see that when you're designing the metal of the hood. You would never see that when you're designing just the plastic of the grille. You only see it when you bring the components together with all the fixings. You would only see it if you get down at the right eye view and blow it up to 700 times real life. So, I mean, that's how precise we're going to do it, right? Which is cool. I mean, appreciate it. I come from that culture, and I have to tell you, the people who do this, They do it with a lot of emotion. They do it with passion. They want to do their best. Nothing wrong with that. I think it's fabulous. This is here Meyerhuber, who was the first director at BMW, design director at BMW. And of course, you can see there who commands. You know, see it right in the picture. What do you suppose he would say about a design like this one here? This is a chair by Robert van Embbrix, I think you pronounce it. You can't read here, but the chair kind of defines itself. And here's the line. A simple question. To what degree is the object you created capable of dictating its own design? All right? What do you suppose he would say about that? A world where the designer doesn't do it, the object does it. What do you suppose Eric Gill would say about that? You know, Eric Gill's world came out of very simple machines, a lathe, you know. He couldn't even possibly imagine something like a 3D printer, right? A 3D printer that empowers people to make any shape they want, you know. I mean, fabulous things that were never possible before are being empowered by these machines. And now we're even thinking if we do it just right, these things will design themselves as well. Hey, we have design-it-yourself sites, like this one here for gifts and baskets, or whatever these guys do. You know, go on, I'll design it myself. Well, okay, you know, take a car, there's tons of car configurators, this one particularly for Mini. And if you're, you know, really, you know, have this need, I suppose you can do your McLaren. Exactly the same thing, right? We offer people all kinds of ways to kind of do faux designing, like, yeah, change the color, cool. Which color? Well, of the 6 I picked, don't worry. You know. We won't let them make any mistakes, right? Who's in command here, right? This kind of a world, yeah, that's like really going to change theirs? I'm not seeing it, honestly. I'm not seeing it. It's the high end of empowerment. But it's the high end of empowerment so entwined with consumption that it only works at the high end. Okay? I'm not saying it's wrong. We just got to figure out how to make it go the other way too. And I would like us to kind of step back a little bit here and just look at this word. At this word. How is it we're actually doing things? How can we do it so that the industrial design revolution of the future is not one where design finally makes the world right for everybody, but we figure a way to make them part of making their world right and still make money and still have people happy in the factories and all that. I don't know how. I'm not offering a solution. I'm posing the problem in a way that I would like you to consider. I would like you to consider what would happen if these headlines changed and said, London's youth are participants. I don't know what they're participating in. But right now, the way we're doing design, ain't nobody participating. Unless you got a lot of money and you would be in the game and use the configurator, and now I'm happy, okay? I don't see these guys being enfranchised. I don't see them as players, do you? And how we're doing this? I see us doing it for them, or getting in there with them and we'll help them design it there, etc., and then we'll leave, and end of that story. And just somehow not seeing that. But this is the word I'd like to see, enfranchised. I'd like to see this change from one part commands the rest to the rest is empowered somehow. That they feel they have a place. That they're not just sitting around at the end of the day thinking the best they can do is maybe become at the agricultural level of 700 years ago and the rest of the world marches on without them. We, as designers, are clever enough that we have figured out how to bring the revolution to them, in a way, being participants, so that they feel elite. And I think it's going to have a big payoff for us. I'm coming to the conclusion here, don't worry. It's not going to drag on too long. I think it'll have a big payoff for us. And I'm going to tell you why. This is a map of the world as, let's say, the Europeans would have seen it in maybe 1300 or something, right? So you've got this part of Europe that they know, and a little bit of Africa down here, and all the rest of the world is a question mark, right? What's out there? Dragons? Who knows? What happened when they discovered new worlds? Yeah, Marco Polo goes out and discovers this. Well, it's like these guys in China, they got a whole civilization out there. Holy cow, you suppose maybe the Vatican is the only center of the universe? I don't know, you know. They brought back, it ushered in the Renaissance. Whenever you discover a new world, it changes your world. Here's a great example. Colonists from Europe brought back indigenous African art. It jump-started avant-garde art revolution, right? Suddenly, they saw a different way of seeing the world, and they changed their world. There's a great photograph done by Apollo 8. We all know this is the one that Al Gore refers to as well. For the first time, we saw a new world. It was ours, but we saw it in a way that nobody had ever really seen it before. And it changed our world. We thought of ourselves differently. Al Gore refers to the fact that it kick-started a new thinking in the Green Revolution, because we discovered a new world. Well, maybe we need to discover a new world. We need to discover a world that's under our noses, but we don't know it, so we don't know how to change our world because of it. If you look at the designer map of the world, it looks like this. It's a big graph. On the top axis, it's everything that has to do with the inspiration and the referencing for design. It's what people eat, and the chairs they sit on, and the movies they watch, and the shapes and colors of their world, and the music they listen to, and their blah, 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 blah. You know, all that stuff that we reference. You know, those mood boards you put up when you're doing design. That's this axis. And this axis is like all the places in the world. USA, Europe, Japan, Korea. You're going to see a big graph like this. This is home, and everything else is a question mark. Oh, okay, you got this island of like Japanese Kurosawa films, and you got this island of, I don't know, Korean food or something, right? But really, think of all these things down here. I mean, quite honestly, what do I know about, I don't know, Palestinian architecture? Not a whole lot. If I don't know about it, why should I care about it? Right? There's a whole world down here to discover that we're not really even looking at. Wouldn't it be great if this was a big map we put online and let everybody try and fill it in? Instead of the old view of the missionaries, you take the word of the central knowledge and you disseminate it to the indigenous population. Let's let design go out and bring back the world of the indigenous to us, the church of design, and illuminate our world. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be an interesting project, I think. I think if we empower people, let them see the world through design in their ways, let them be players in design, then we, as designers, as the professionals, will raise the bar of our game. You know, we'll be demanding more of ourselves because, hey, we're the pros, right? I'm sure the skill of writing has improved because other people can write. And this is what I'm asking for. I'm asking you to think about, is the way we're doing the game of design the best way to empower the world? Maybe there's a way to bring design for industry where it makes all the money, it runs all the ships out there, keeps all the stockbrokers happy. We don't want to put that in question. Maybe there's a way to dial in this axis. Maybe there is a way we can create a new industrial humanism. This is like the section of the last slide. This is an article that came out when BMW showed Gina for the first time. That's the flexible skin car. Alice Rostone, who's a critic for the New York Times, she wrote this quote: "The most thrilling periods in design history are the ones of the greatest change, when designers interpret shifts in science, technology, behavior, and politics for the rest of us." Are we in a moment of great change? Who would say no, right? Are we interpreting this? I don't know. I think we're kind of still playing the same old music. So that's my request for you guys today. Think about that, please, and thank you very much for your time.
So we've got time for some questions. I'm sure there will be some. I've got some if people haven't, so who wants to go first?
I would agree with that, that there is a challenge in there. But maybe it's just how we're doing things that has a little bit to do with that. And we have this idea that quality equals repetitive precision. This is the only idea we have. We don't think quality is, this is unusual. Doesn't look like the one next to it on the shelf. But, you know, 100 years ago, that would have been the quality. That would have been the quality of the individual artisan. But we took that out, right? So if we bring that back in, we have to let something go as designers. We have to say, I may have designed this, but this guy changed it. It's still cool. Like Pino doing the stairs and stuff like that. And maybe that's at the heart of looking at how stuff actually exists. Not just less stuff or stuff done clever with less materials, that of course. But this idea that, this is what I want you to think about, the stuff that comes from me as a designer is not complete just because I say it so. Well, maybe, okay, good question. I mean, we could do something online, I suppose, ask people to participate. There's a lot of people that you work with every day that come from interesting cultural backgrounds, but in design studios and things, we don't really ask for them to think a lot about their background. They may bring it up every once in a while as a little note, you know, but we don't really ask people to see it from their own cultural perspective. I was just recently in India looking at some products there, and you could see a definite trend towards trying to make it look European, also in China. Let's try to make it look European, because that's, you know, these guys are buying the cars probably, and it's got to look, you know, don't make it look like it's too much us, otherwise they won't like it, right? But if we, as designers, in our critiques, in our discussions on design, and when we say this is a good product or a bad one, we look at that factor and say, do you see any of that culture where it came from in that? And ask us to be celebrated. Maybe that's one way that people will begin to at least acknowledge they have to look at it, in some sense. I would love it if somebody somewhere, some design center said, we'll take it on ourselves to make that map, for instance. You know? But what it means is send people out into the field and come back and tell me what is architecture from these places. What is their idea of colors? We don't even have a map of the colors of the world, really, honestly, in a historical sense. I mean, there's lots of books on color and where color came from, but in truly, the historical and cultural root basis of color. This is a very, very interesting phenomenon that we are wiping out as we, you know, technologize new colors into it, right? We change things and we add things, etc. I don't want to turn the clock back and say we do things in a more, you know, rudimentary fashion. But the idea to try and discover it through the people that we know already is the first step. No, no, you're right, you're right. And so I guess we're talking first about a mindset. And I would submit that particularly designed for groups of disadvantaged, disabled, challenged people has been a focus group for a long time, you're right. And probably the lessons learned in there and how to incorporate them. What was the word you used? You used integrate? No, what's another word?
It's about involvement.
Involvement, yeah. Probably they're actually quite mature processes, and it's a mature mindset there in terms of involvement for that. And that's a very good way of saying it. Maybe we set the bar too high, you know. We think if it's not talking about designing a car and they're not actually drawing a picture or something, they're not involving in that. But there's a lot of people out there with a lot of time on their hands. And it would be nice to see if whatever we involve them in uses that time as well. Actually, that's why I was doing it like that. Yeah, and but I hope you also would agree with me that designers tend to see themselves as elites. They paid a lot of money for their schools, you know, and I'm sure from your point of view, you're much quicker at leveling the playing field than someone coming at this through the skin of a designer.
Yeah, no, I love the talk. Just thought the language.
No, you're right, you're right, you're right. And I'll apologize then for the abuse of us and theminess. But a lot of the pictures I see in the news and stuff, it's really hard for me to think this is ussiness. It's like them. It's not us. That's them. And that's not going to change tomorrow. But I'd sure like the thems out there to feel less them, you know, and more we. Okay, I can see where you're coming from, but I'm going to respectfully disagree. Because when you make yourself available as a designer, you make yourself available as a designer. It's a cool thing. It's a good thing. You know, little pro bono work, you know, that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with this. And I try to do things for the community when I see an opportunity. And they have, believe me, no problems coming and talking to me about things. But that's not what I'm asking for here. And I didn't make a staircase and invite people in and say, why don't you do part of it? I mean, Pino works for me. He's an employee. I mean, he's a bricklayer. I'm building a house. I'm the designer. The point I wanted to make was, as a designer, I should have designed that staircase and laid that thing out perfectly and said, Pino, if you don't make it like this, it's wrong. That's the point I want to say. I think I'm at the point now where I can say, I kind of want it like this, but I'm interested in how you would do it so that your opinion comes through. So in the sense that you're right, design can put much more into a community. If we ask communities how to use our services, that I'll agree with. But to me, that doesn't change the fundamental equation. Why are they coming to us? Well, because we're the elites and we have the skills. And that's what I want to challenge with this here. So I will respectfully disagree by agreeing with you that it's a good thing to do.
I guess I was leaving the door open for them to turn around and say, we don't need your help.
Great, great. Actually, can I just make a comment on there? One thing I have noticed, I mean, my community is like 50 people. It's not really big. And it's in a community of about 2,000 people. And there's some things about this. It's a nice little piece of Italy. It's gorgeous. You come down, it's Salanga, come down. It's great wine. Please come to Clavisana. Drink the wine. It's wonderful. But like any community, you know, things could be a little bit different here, a little bit different there. We have a particular curve on the road that I don't like because it's a blind curve. The people don't have anywhere to walk. They walk on the curve, and so sometimes, there's a person in the road. So I had my guys take a picture of the curve, photo retouch it, show, look, if we put a path over it, put a little picnic table, wouldn't this be nice, cost almost nothing, and give these people a way to get from A to B without being in front of my car. I tell you, to just put this little picture, which is like nothing to do for us, right? In front of a politician, you know, the local mayor, it just opened up his eyes. Oh, that's fantastic. I realized we're not showing possibilities to people very often, right? And maybe that's one of the things that you're saying is design has a skill we should think about leveraging is we're good at visualizing possibilities. And maybe one way to begin the involvement is to begin to show possibilities to people. I'm asking for a thought revolution in design because we bring meaning to the world. We are the ones who mediate the world through meaning. Right? Our world is full of stuff, opportunities, objects, things to do, things to make happen, and we, through our powers, mediate that for people by giving it a sense of meaning. In fact, the product semanticists use meaning as a definition of design. No meaning, no design. If you think about these guys here, okay, the day after they get the vote, what do they do? What's he do? Somebody build a factory there, so he does exactly what somebody else does, except for a lot lower money, until that factory goes away to somewhere else where there's less money. The whole model of who does what in this system is led by us by saying the model is one of defined precision of how the world will be created, and everybody else from us down is merely an enabler to that. Okay, an enabler. And so it is true, it is about a cultural phenomenon at the end. It is true. But because I believe that the phenomenon of culture is definitely wrapped up into the world we as designers bring to it as the mediators of meaning, I want us to enfranchise them in that process. And not just to make their world meaningful, but to make their lives meaningful. Well, first of all, I hope you more or less agree with me that designers tend to see the world in those chunks.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm part of the Singapore government's program on design. They have a Design Singapore Council, which brings in expertise. Dick Powell, Richard Seymour from London are also part of it. They bring in some experts on design. Theoretically, that's us. Right? And what is their mission? Their mission is their government has decided that the future belongs to societies which are design-led, that are themselves design cultures. So, you know, in classic Singaporean style, they said, okay, this is what we're going to become. How do we do it? Here's a commission. Go figure out how to do it. Right? You know what? You got to take these guys kind of seriously because they're really smart and they're really sharp on this thing and they're really, really convinced. And when you see what they ask, the questions that they ask, and you begin to delve into how their society is revolving around that, you can say bad, good, everything like this, lots of kinds of things. But just from this one point of view, how they are beginning to see a commitment to that, it's very interesting, very eye-opening. I was recently in not recently, it was over a year ago, I guess, in a hospital in Singapore where we visited a general hospital, you know, it was a public hospital, run by an absolute fanatic guy for the quality care of his patients. And he did it in a manner which involved the doctors and nurses at the absolutely metabolic level. He had them out there counting the number of butterflies in the garden, because that is an indication of the air quality. Every plant that was there, and you know, Singapore's a lot of plants, right? Had a name on it, and there was a nurse or a doctor responsible for watering that, right? You know, there was this idea, you are embedded into this entire culture. You're not here as just one elite faction of it. And I thought that way of, in a certain sense, empowering them by co-involving them at a layer which probably their professional concept of what my job is said that belongs to a gardener or a janitor or something. I thought that was really interesting. We're all very, very impressed by this. So I haven't seen the world enough to really know where things are happening. There's tons and tons of examples of people trying to empower people, trying to get in. I don't want to say that this is not happening, not at all. They really are. But what I really don't see is us approaching the fundamental processes of how the world comes together in any other manner than we as creatives say it's like this. From there on down, anything less than exactly that is imprecise, is bad quality, right? And that's the shell I'm trying to attack.
I've got a question for you. At Sense, we do a lot of this co-creation, co-design work, and we've actually been involved with the Singaporean stuff as well. Kind of talking about, you know, how you get people engaged, how you get people enfranchised. We do it for really big clients. I'm doing it for a bank at the moment, trying to turn this relationship around, you know, bring the humanism back into banking. I'd love to be able to do it for the automotive sector, but they just can't seem to get their heads around it. There's a fear there that you know, when you kind of get into a room with consumers, they're going to tell you stuff that you don't want to hear. Why is that, and how can we get around that? Because I'd love to, you know, try and affect some of the change in the automotive sector that we've been able to affect in other sectors, but you can't get the traction with them. He's going to ask me for money now.
No. Well, you know, there's a famous saying in American history when there was a battle. Actually, with you guys, and it's one the armies won that one. Anyway, and the general said at the end, or the admiral captain in that particular case said, "We have met the enemy and they are ours," meaning we have captured them, etc., etc. And in the 50s, when the ecological movement was really beginning to start, Walt Kelly in the cartoon Pogo rephrased that and said, "We've met the enemy and it's us." Okay, so if you want to deal with something as complex as the automotive industry, you have to look at yourselves. You have to look at us, what we ask of them. And actually what we ask of the automotive industry is super freaking complex. And if it doesn't match exactly that, we're going to sue their butts off, right? And so we ask them to do things which are wildly beyond any kind of price-performance ratio that in any other sector you would imagine, like, which is safety and things, which is a good thing, until you start looking at cost per casualties and stuff like that, and you go, well, it's good. I mean, I wouldn't want me to be that. I wouldn't want my kid to be that casualty, so let's make that safer. And all these things make the process better, make the cars safer, make them more efficient, but drives up the margin for error, reduces the margin for error to like super slimness. You make one mistake, that whole puppy goes down the drain. And because of the investments involved in it, everybody's terrified to change that. That's, you know, the Project Gina that we did was actually existed not just to make a cloth car that would be really cool. It was to do something without this incredible billion-dollar price tag of investment tooling. So that maybe there's some leftover money for safety and some leftover money for ecological things, because we got rid of that need to pay for this incredibly complex tools, which put out a precise everything, every time, precise. No, we'll do it like a jacket, you know? It's cool enough. Hey, if it wears out in 2 years, who cares? We'll replace it. You know, it took them 2 hours to skin that car. You couldn't even take a scratch out of your door in 2 hours. So our approach was, let's change the mindset of how that whole industry physically sees its product to free up resources that are going into it for other good things like safety and like ecological things. But because we as consumers have a super narrow mindset, it's this or it's nothing, right? We put their margin for error really, really slim. And that margin doesn't allow for a whole lot of external inputs who don't understand these things. When you go into a culture, You go to a culture like in India, 70% of the vehicles on the road are scooters and bikes, right? Scooters and bikes have a completely different effect of how they relate with people. So what you see is a traffic flow which is different. You see a use of the products which is different. You got people riding side saddle on these things, right? Why? Because the dress is like that. You can't actually spread your legs over that, so you got to sit side saddle on that. It's typical. You know, all kinds of things that if you dial that into this litigation-minded culture that we're coming from, you probably wouldn't do that. My goodness gracious. What happens if somebody falls off, you know? Well, I guess it happens. It's terrible. I must say, I just spent a week there, and no, I take that back. We were 3 days in Mumbai. But in 3 days, in a very, very crowded city, I didn't see one accident. I didn't see one crashed vehicle. I didn't see one cop car racing to a scene. I didn't see one ambulance. I didn't see any evidence of what, when you spend 3 days in LA, you will definitely see. Okay? So something's got to be working right. Fits and starts, pieces everywhere, I suppose. It's a multi-sided problem. It's a multi-sided issue. It's got to be handled in multi ways, you know. We talk a lot about end user configuration, but we're keeping it really narrow because, goodness gracious, we wouldn't want the end user to have the wheels fall off on him, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So maybe we have to look at the environment in which we're asking this to happen and say, can we readdress this in other ways and look at it a little bit differently? It would be wonderful if there was a new way to bring information like your father has, which I find really inspiring, right, into the forefront of our knowledge. I mean, honestly, I'm sure that there are all kinds of meetings where people talk about energy efficient buildings, et cetera, and they probably bring up these issues of, I mean, I can remember seeing one where the guy brought up about how termites make a termite mound in Africa, which has got like 60-degree temperature difference from the inside and the outside, and he told us all that we just have to be smarter than the ants. And then we're going, okay, I guess we're not, you know. But those wonderful ways of bringing that in front of people, if we understand that not just as, oh, I can learn how to make my building better, but I learn it, as you just explained it, how to appreciate that culture better, how to see that history into it. You know, if you look at a movie, at the end of the movie, what happens? What do you get at the end of the movie? Credits, right? You all seen a movie that's done in CG, like Avatar or something? You just know how long the credits are, right? Right? Where's the credits for a building? Where's the credit that says inspiration from this Arab architect who did this building? Where's the credits on a car that said this team of engineers worked on this and solved that problem? I mean, maybe just acknowledgement would be one step in the world towards enfranchisement. We'll acknowledge their contribution. You know, I mean, my goodness gracious. Everybody says in little parentheses, and we can thank, you know, the Persian world, the Arab world in the year 700 because they gave us, I don't know, the number system or whatever. And then you throw it out. We don't think about the daily contribution that people make into our lives. Maybe we should celebrate that a bit more too.